As time goes by, each generation finds themselves repeating the same mistakes as their parents, whether that's financial failure or just simply the resentment of being born into whatever feels like a lackluster life. Each generation has much more in common than they like to believe. In this video, let's sit down together and spend some time discussing how as much as these newer generations claim to hate the authority in their parents so much, they seem to be a spitting image and a resemblance of who their parents are. If you personally can relate to anything discussed in this video, or you've simply just been enjoying my daily rumor commentaries over here on the page, then don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, opinions down below, and subscribe to see my daily videos right here on the channel. And a huge shout out to the handful of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. Now, let's begin this shit show.
Boomers adored commercials. They liked a good Folgers commercial with the family sitting together and they're drinking coffee. Boomers loved commercials. They thought that all of these things that corporations really cared about them, and they were very somewhat naive. And I think they're kind of like spinning out a little bit now because they've realized a little bit to some degree how wrong they were about everything. And it was now it's kind of becoming, a pattern.
Now, if you look back at the past trends, every generation has been fooled by consumerism. And some things might make sense, like, trying to decorate your house for Christmas trees and, being able to, impress your neighbors with all your Christmas lights and having, all these different lawn ornaments. I kind of can understand that. But there's also these ridiculous sentiments, like, these new things like the Labubu dolls, which are pretty much just a new reinstatement of Beanie Babies, which happened so long ago. There's like a chase, you want to get the best one. Now, fair enough, it's a little more of a random, like a loot box of sorts, but gambling being the biggest prominence in the modern day world, it seems to be a part of all these new trends. So, of course, there's going to be a little bit of a loot box or a little bit of mystery gambling aspect to it, but it's very similar to what, our parents and the older people that we are making fun of for falling for these things, we're falling for the same exact things right now. Now, I don't know if you have found yourself buying Labubu dolls, if you bought one for your kids or your girlfriend or whoever in your life, or if you're just like me and you think it's kind of ridiculous and a waste of money. Now, I don't necessarily hate every toy. I don't hate every, thing. If you have a hobby, if you have a collection, do your thing. If you can afford it, enjoy it. But a lot of people, at least my age, they don't have a place to store this type of shit. So they're trying to afford their life. They can't even think about buying this extra bullshit. So at the end of the day, do you think this is just a nonstop problem and there will be another Beanie Baby, Labubu, whatever the fuck is next, coming for the next 2 generations next, or whatever's going to happen? Or do you think this is just maybe one day we'll break the cycle and we'll finally be spending our money on stuff that's going to actually reinstate society? But I doubt that.
Boomers and Gen Z are both selfish, just for different value sets, but they mirror each other very well. Boomers want what they want, depending on the industry, but for the most part, the boomers are like, listen, you come to work, I'm gonna need a shirt, I'm gonna need a tie. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. We don't call people by their first name. You need to put a title in a hat. You be to work on time. Regardless of what happens, you do what your boss says. And if you can't work in that environment, I don't want you in my company. I don't want you on my team, because for me, this is the most important. When you look at Z, Z in many cases is concerned about not necessarily expending wealth, not necessarily creating a rigid work environment around their values. They're more around just, I want to do what I want to do. So it's very, very internally focused.
I understand that everybody can think differently, and that's one of my biggest, blessings of being born in America, is that you have the freedom of expression, at least, kind of like an illusion. I don't know if you really do. You can always really post what you want online, depending on what platform you're posting on, and even on here, I gotta watch what I say. But at the end of the day, it is kind of crazy to think how I kind of hate these blanket statements that we put on these overall groups of people, whether that's the generations, whether that's race, whether that's just, anything. I hate the stereotypes, because although some of them might hold some weight, in some aspects, I think overall they're just not very true, and they paint a very bad picture for the average person when you meet them, and it teaches the youth a bad imagery of what they're going to be facing in reality, because it's just not really the raw reality of matters. Is that you can meet a lot of old people who still have a young heart. You can meet a lot of young people who have a lot of hatred in their heart as well. So have you guys thought about this yourselves? Have you guys ever kind of experienced, have you guys been indoctrinated to think a certain way, and then you grew up and you kind of broke out of that, or your own personal life experiences kind of swayed you away from what you were initially taught your entire life? Because I found that myself, and as you've listened to me and we've been learning along through my channel, it seems to only get harsher and harsher the longer we go along. So feel free to let me know your aspect of this down below in the comments.
Y'all stay with me on this one. So the baby boomers and the Gen X's, our parents and grandparents, are always saying this generation's so lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything. Why would we? Because look at what the system has done us. We're burnout. Gen Zs don't want to work because they see how burnout the millennials are because they can't get ahead in today's world. Okay? Y'all come from a society where you worked, you could afford a house, you could afford a family, you could take your family on vacation, you had a nice car, and you worked 40 hours a week, off every weekend. Now what's even crazier to me is you got people that are making $100, $120, $150,000 a year that can't afford a house because houses are $100,000 houses now $400,000. They can't even get approved for it. Then you got kids that the Gen X is pushing college. So these kids go to college, then they get out of college. For one, if they can even find work, they find work, it's a good paying job, but now student loans eating up their paycheck. So what's the sense? If we can't get ahead in life, no wonder nobody wants to work. No wonder Gen Z don't want to work. They're burnt out. Millennials are burnt out. It's a failing system that has failed us miserably. That's the difference between the baby boomers from Gen X and millennials and Gen Z.
Something that humans can never really just accept is that time will continue to go on for the rest of forever. So each generation will die out and there will be a new one coming right up behind them. Now, it's kind of funny to say how as much as you want to hate boomers, you might hate Gen X, you might hate your parents, you might hate your grandparents, you might hate people that you think built the system that you despise right now and you think might be holding you back. Well, one day we might be in charge of this said system and then we can try to change it in whichever ways possible. And then we will be getting blamed for having the system right now when there might be do you think maybe your parents maybe felt the same way? I mean, there was the whole hippie movement back in the 70s, 80s and stuff like that. My parents were a part of all that. So what do you think? This is going to be a nonstop cycle of just, blame, but also that's what they want, guys. They want the masses to point fingers at each other versus really kind of figure out who's really running this whole shit. Can I tell you who it is? I don't fucking know. I wish I did, but if I did, they probably wouldn't let me have this channel. So let me know down below in the comments if you think you got to figure it out, and it's always nice to ponder on these types of subjects. Now, as much hatred as you feel when you're sitting down at your Thanksgiving dinner table, just remember, you'll have to sit down there again next year. So watch what you say, don't say anything that you're going to regret, and when your parents die, you might still have some of their inheritance, you might be in the will, so don't fuck it up too soon. But at the end of the day, that's not the way we should be thinking. That's what the devil wants you to think. You gotta love your grandparents for who they are, you gotta love your parents for who they are, and realize that one day your kids will hate you for the same reason you hate them, so it's just what it is. But either way, feel free to let me know all your guys' thoughts, opinions down below in the comments. I always love to sort through those, read those, and respond to the ones I see fit. As well as a huge shout out to the handful of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. I plan to continue these videos daily and try to be as consistent and authentic and genuine with these quality videos as I can. And yeah, you guys are the best. Hope you guys have been enjoying. It's kind of it for me today in this one, so I'll see you next time.